So, good morning to everyone. Um, so, Mr. Fields, good morning to you. You can actually speak.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You sound like you're asleep, but
I just rolled out of bed.
that's cool. You can turn your camera on if you want to. Um, so I'm going to give everybody a minute or two to get in here, and then we'll get started.
I should sound better now. I was using the wrong mic.
No, that's cool. Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
Cool.
Morning.
Good
Oh, I
morning.
look terrible.
That's awesome. Um,
Yeah, no, let me go ahead and stop that.
you're just gonna stop that, huh?
Yeah.
Um, so I'm gonna pull this thing. Well, I said I was. Get off of that screen. Nah, you know what? I can do this. I'll make it pop back up here in a minute. I'm going to look at, see where you're at.
I should be in the same spot for Ingenuity. I didn't do anything this weekend.
Let's go. It's a weekend. I didn't do a whole lot. I read a little bit of I almost read all of a book and read part of another one, so.
Oh no, I'm behind now. Okay.
Well, today's is up there, so.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So let's see here. Oh, there you are. So, yeah, you're actually a little behind. You should have been at 29.4% on Friday, and by the end of the day, you should be at 37%. So,
I'll catch up today.
yeah, that's pretty easy to do. All right. Make this thing come back. There it is. That's crazy. You guys are usually pretty good about this. I guess y'all just not getting up this morning.
I don't know. Might have been the weekend. I mean, I didn't go to sleep until like 3 a.m. I don't know how I'm awake.
Yeah, this weekend was crazy. I think I saw this meme. The person had posted up this whole like daily schedule: 7 a.m. breakfast, 7:30 the breakfast, dessert, and it just like went out throughout the day. And there's like these different. It was kind of like Lord of the Rings. Does he not know elevensies? Does he know second lunch? Does he know thirds? So it was kind of funny, but yeah. So anyway, I do not have your mic turned off. You can turn your mic on and speak there, Miss Elderkin, if you would like. So good morning to you. I actually went outside and mowed my yard yesterday. So that's the bit was the highlight of my weekend. It's sad, I know.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah. Good morning, Miss Madison. So, Miss Madison, after our session on Friday, I do world history after I do you guys, and I use this, and it worked really, really well. So I think I'm going to start doing all of these sessions this way. And I do have the ability to record them. So, yeah. Let's do that. I don't know if this will do this. No, I'm not going to do it. So we'll just turn that off. Huh. Oh well. Well, y'all are just not a talkative bunch at all, are you?
Not this early in the morning.
Alright. I am going to close the door, so hold on. My wife works from home, and I left the door open and she could hear. So, alright. I'm back. I wonder. Let's do that. And y'all kill me.
What?
How do I get to the meeting? Go to the class page. And then the reply is, how do I get to the meeting? You guys, not tech savvy at all. Y'all know Instagram and Snapchat and like how to take pictures. That's about it. All right, let's get today started. Oops, what did I just do with it? Oh, there it is. All right, so I am going to share my screen with you guys and gals. Let's put this at the bottom down here. That works out of the way. All right. So, yeah. I updated the plan book. And what I did is not only does it say, hey, you should be doing your Edgenuity, but it actually, when it pops up here in a second, will say where you're supposed to be. As of Friday afternoon, as of Friday afternoon, you guys should have completed, well, according to the thing, 29.46%. So somewhere around about 29%. And today you should be finishing up your rights, freedom of expression, and then you'll begin working on your rights due process. I think there's just like a quiz. So if you did the quiz from freedom of expression, uh, that would have closed that out, and then you would start due process today. And I think the way it has it is like you do this. The way it's looking is you do the stuff, and then the quiz looks like it's popping up the next day. But you can do it all in one day if you just so choose. So by the time you get to the end of today, you should be at 37%. All right, hold on. Come on, dog. Go. She didn't like being locked up here. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So that should get you to the end of today. I did not assign any new USA Test Prep. So if you finished USA Test Prep, which I don't actually remember, I don't think did I assign you guys USA Test Prep? We can look and see. I don't honestly remember assigning you guys USA Test Prep.
I'm not 100% sure either. I haven't logged into USA Test Prep in a while.
I think a lot of your classmates have seen this as an opportunity to just like go on vacation. And so they have not done anything at all, period. I did not put it up. Yeah, I did. I assigned you guys. I don't know. It's like videos and stuff. Looks like some of you guys have actually, like 20 some odd of you guys and gals have actually worked on it. So, that's kind of cool. About half of you, it looks like, at least. Alright, so something that I did in Edgenuity is for those of you, and I stopped, well, I guess I could, because you guys can still see the screen, so I don't guess that really mattered. Stop sharing. I've got something recording it, and so stop sharing. Okay. So I can go in here, and anybody who's made like less than a 70, what I'm doing is I'm either giving you another attempt at it, that one, or like resetting it. Like I think somebody had made like a 50, and so I just reset it for them.
Will it reset the whole thing, Newton?
Nope, it just resets that particular assignment. So, like, while I'm sitting here talking to you guys, and you guys cannot see this, but I had seen somebody who had made a 60, and so what I did is I just clicked on that particular assignment and reset it. Do you have one that you would like to redo or something, or?
It was the last two I had told you last time. You told me you was going to see what you can do about it.
Oh, that's in USA Test Prep. Yeah, I can do that too. Hold on. Let me go back to USA Test Prep. Let me find your name. That's really weird. So you had one that was 75%. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And you want me to reset that one?
Mm-mm. It was one that had a 50 on.
I don't see that one for some reason. Oh, hold on. I'm not looking in the right area. Alright, so do you remember which? I would have to go through and look at all of these, which is not, it's not that big of a deal. I can do real quick here. Alright, not that one. Not that one. It says you think it was one of the last ones?
Yes.
Okay. This could be a little more user friendly, the way this thing is put in here, but it is not. Every one of them I'm seeing so far, you did like 100 on, so I don't. Alright. So I'm going to reset this one. And alright, so that was the only one that was not 100 that I saw
Okay.
in USA Test Prep.
Okay.
Alrighty. So, Mr. Freeman, how are you? I see you finally made it in here. You are the first. No, you're the second person. I think Rogerius McLean's the other person from your class that actually made it. Nobody else has made it from your class. All right. So, just a really quick recap. Make sure that you're doing your stuff in Edgenuity, and the USA Test Prep stuff is in fact for extra credit.
I have Ingenuity. How do I log on to it?
Go to Launchpad. So
Okay.
yeah. So if you, this thing is kind of annoying how this does this. So if you go to Students, Launchpad is at the bottom. When you click on it, it'll ask you to log in just like you normally do at school. And then, of course, it'll look like this. And you just click on the one that says Blended Learning. Blended Learning is for you guys. The credit recovery is like if you failed something and, you know, you've already been assigned that before this even started. So that's what that's about. All right, so today I thought I would talk to you guys a little bit about, because we had planned on, and I think I'd already opened this up. Maybe I didn't. We had planned on talking about and taking some quizzes in relation to where'd I go? Come on. Some of the different events. So I thought I would start with talking about Plessy versus Ferguson. So you tell me, what is Plessy versus Ferguson about? What you guys remember?
Let me go get my notes.
You gotta go get your notes, huh? That's all right.
So Plessy versus Ferguson?
Yep. Go away. There it goes. All right, you usually know these answers there, Arista. Are you still asleep too? Or y'all up video chatting till 3 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Fields? Is that what y'all were doing?
Definitely not, Mr. Newton.
Definitely not.
I'm a little too tired for this.
Too tired for this? Yeah. All right. So Plessy versus Ferguson was the separate but equal case. If you've looked these up, you probably know that it was actually about a guy. His name is Homer Plessy, and basically he agreed to test the whole, was the 14th Amendment going to hold? Largely, what had happened was, at the end of the Civil War, there was, in fact, essentially martial law during the Reconstruction. Compromise of 1877 led to the end of Reconstruction and withdrawal of federal troops from the South. And they wanted to basically see if the 13th, 14th, and the 15th Amendments of the Constitution would hold, and they found out pretty quickly that disenfranchisement returned pretty quickly. And they basically talked this guy into buying a ticket to get on a train in Louisiana, and he was going to go from one place to the other. Well, he was actually a mixed race. The term that they would have used at that time would have been miscegenated or mulatto. He called himself, I think, like 87% white and like 13% black, and he actually looked pretty white, passably white. And so he bought a ticket in 1892 in June in New Orleans, bound for Covington, Louisiana, I think, or whatever. And he sat on the whites only car, and so they'd already started separating the cars, and of course you knew the white cars were obviously a lot better cared for than the black cars at the time. When he refused to get out of the seat and leave the car, the conductor had him arrested. He was jailed. Goes all the way up to the Supreme Court. It takes like 5 years for it to get there. So 1896, it makes it to the Supreme Court, and they actually deliver the verdict, which is separate but equal. So they're saying that based off of the ability for them to have a place to ride, they're not denying them their constitutional right, which is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment, that Well, what specifically does the 14th Amendment say? Nobody?
I mean, I can read it off Google for you.
You can read it off of Google for me, huh? It granted citizenship to all persons born and naturalized in the United States, including former slaves, and guaranteed all citizens equal protection of the law. That's the down and dirty of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they should have equal protection, and how they interpreted that for this specifically was that they should be able to sit wherever they want to. And the Supreme Court said, you know what? There's a place for them to sit. They have the same accommodations, so separate is equal. And so this becomes separate but equal. And this is kind of what perpetuated the Jim Crow laws, which, interesting enough, was named after he was like a figure in a traveling minstrel show. He was a blackface character, and these laws started essentially, it was black codes that created a legal form of segregation, and these became known as the Jim Crow laws, and they did follow separate but equal, to an extent. So what I mean by that, and these Jim Crow laws lasted well into the 1960s, from the 1860s to the 1960s. Yes, there was education. Yes, they had somewhere to sit. They had water fountains to drink out of, bathrooms to go to. They could eat from the restaurant. But to truly say separate and equal was not really fair. A phrase that will start popping up during the civil rights movement is separate but unequal. And I think that's true. You guys remember we talked about public education and how when they forced integrated the school system, I asked you guys, was it really fair to force integrate the school system? Because they had been given inferior education, and so there was no way for them to really be successful and be integrated into the school system. So yeah, that created a lot of animosity. So Jim Crow led to what we will see, and we've kind of already talked about this a little bit, but voting rights issues, interstate commerce issues, poll taxes, which was one of your vocabulary words. All right. So let's talk about Brown versus the Board of Education. Brown versus Board of Education. When was that? When was Brown versus the Board of Education?
December 9th, 1952.
That's when it started, right?
Yeah.
1954?
Yeah, so the court case is actually 1954, but it started in December of 1952, so yeah. And is it important to know where?
Topeka.
Yeah, Topeka, Kansas. And the reason that I ask you that is because Topeka, Kansas is where it originally started. There's actually a second Brown case, but this is the big Brown versus Board of Education case. Oliver Brown tried to enroll. Him and several other people tried to enroll their kids into white schools because they were closer to where they lived, and so there was busing going on at this time, and of course the black schools were not. They just didn't have the opportunities. The teachers were not as educated because they didn't get the opportunity to get the education that they should have been afforded. They used the whole Plessy versus Ferguson case, and they argued that separate was not equal. And they said that because they were separating them, that this violated the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. And this is the interesting thing about the Supreme Court is that, and I think you guys, and we'll talk more about the Supreme Court when we get to that section in this class, but I think you'll notice that depending on who's on the Supreme Court, what the mood of politics is at any given time, kind of affects the decisions that are made. Now, I asked you guys when we talked a couple of weeks ago about why was it important for them to be elected for life, and I think you guys all hit it on the nail on the head when you said, this keeps them from, having to worry about running for office, and so they're not going to try to make promises based off of that, and so it gives them their ability to make their kind of own free will and judgment based off of their conscience and what they feel about it. The Supreme Court actually reversed the Plessy case. They actually said that it had no place in public education. They said it even generates a feeling of inferiority. This decision basically forced them to integrate the schools. And sad to say, in my home state of Alabama, is one of the most famous scenes where Governor George Wallace stands on the steps there at the front of the University of Alabama, and with the National Guard, they block students from registering, and they eventually, President Kennedy will send National Guard troops in and force them to allow integration of the school at the University of Alabama. This happened at Arkansas, Arkansas 9. Same thing happened. So this happened at a lot of the major universities throughout the South. So let's talk about some stuff that happened in World War II. What did they do to the Japanese people in World War II?
What did they do to them?
Japanese citizens here in the United States, what did they do to them?
You put them in camps?
They did put them in camps. Do you know where these camps were located?
Somewhere in the South?
They were actually not in the South. Where still do a lot of Japanese Americans live in the United States?
believe it was on the Pacific coast.
Yeah, so it's on the West Coast. So all throughout Oregon, the state of Washington, and California. This past summer, you guys have heard me talk about going out and driving back from the Seattle area with my wife. We actually drove past a few of these places, and we actually stopped at Manzanar, which is one of the more widely known ones. Out in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere. It's really kind of crazy, eerie. Still today, and it was really weird to just we had literally come out of the backside of Yellowstone and I'm sorry, not Yellowstone, Yosemite. We'd come out of the backside of Yosemite, and we were driving towards Death Valley, and I saw the sign, and I was like, are we really there? And like all around us, you could see nothing but mountains, huge, like 10, 12, 13,000 foot mountains on both sides of us. We're in this huge, like, desert in between these, like, mountains, and you can see nothing for miles. We have been driving, and you could see really nothing for miles, little spots in the road, random here and there. And out in the middle of this desert is still, and it's a national park protected thing now. And we pulled in there, and it's just this, like, spot in the road, and there's, like, these, they almost look like chicken houses, really, in all honesty. But it's Manzanar, and it's really weird. But we treated our internment camp people a lot better than the Germans treated the people they put in theirs. But this all happened because even though we had Japanese who were in the U.S. military, people who were citizens of the U.S., who were former Japanese nationals, it was a fear that since we didn't know who they were, we just rounded them all up so that they couldn't, after December the 7th, 1941, right? So that they couldn't, I guess, infiltrate from within and help fight against us. So, and we still allowed Japanese military units. So there's a guy, his name is Fred Korematsu. He was an American-born U.S. citizen with Japanese parents, and he refused to relocate. The U.S. military issued an exclusion order for most of the West Coast. And Mr. Korematsu was arrested. They basically argued that the government violated their Fifth Amendment, which says that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process. The Supreme Court had disagreed in a previous court case, and they said that normal circumstances, racial discrimination is unconstitutional, but the situation during the war with Japan was different. So Korematsu was, he basically lost the case. And as a result of that, right or wrong, and from a military standpoint, I personally can see why they did it. From a 2020 perspective and mindset, we would all say that, that's wrong. But to live in the 1940s and to understand the mindset about, and as somebody who is a historian, I can understand why they had that mindset. I think we can all agree that probably was not the best approach, and they probably could have approached it a little differently. But nonetheless, President Ronald Reagan in 1988, he basically apologized. He signed a law and provided restitution to Japanese Americans who were interned during World War One. So there were like 120,000 of them that were still alive or descendants of them. So it's kind of interesting that, and we've done this a couple of times. If you guys remember, when you took U.S. and World Affairs, and maybe even if you're a senior, you've taken U.S. history, and you talked about stuff like the Spanish-American War and World War One and World War Two, how we've suspended different aspects of the Bill of Rights in order to protect the country and to protect our citizens, or in some cases even generate propaganda. That is Korematsu versus the United States. Which one has to do with you have the right to remain silent?
Which amendment?
No, which court case from our list? Nobody looked it up.
Miranda versus Arizona.
There you go, Miss Madison. Ernesto Miranda was arrested for a violent crime in Phoenix, Arizona, and was taken to the police station for questioning. They put him in the interrogation room. They questioned him for 2 hours. They had this confession he signed. They said that there's a paragraph in there where he basically said, "Yes, I made this voluntarily." It specifically said, "With full knowledge of my legal rights, understanding any statement I make may be used against me." And he was convicted because he made a statement against himself. So, the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution says that you can basically remain silent and you don't have to incriminate yourself. Also, Sixth Amendment says that you have to have legal representation and a lawyer was not present during questioning. He argued that because of the Fifth and Sixth Amendment that his confession should not be used in court. And the Supreme Court agreed. And what they said is it doesn't matter, even if a person already knows this right, that the right is not a safeguard unless officers tell them about it before interrogation begins. And so it is Miranda versus Arizona that led to police. They actually have to say you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. You have a right to talk to an attorney or have him present with you while you are being questioned. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one would be appointed to represent you before any questioning. If you wish, you can decide at any time to exercise these rights and not answer any questions or make any statements. And they have to ask you, do you understand each of these rights I have explained to you? Having these rights in mind, do you wish to talk to us now? They are supposed to say that word for word. So this is the famous Miranda warning. And it all happened in 1966 because this guy was basically forced to confess against himself. I think the only one left on our list is Gideon versus Wainwright. Is that correct? Is that the only one from the list that we haven't mentioned? So Gideon, is about representing yourself. Would you know what to do if you had to represent yourself? Yes, so.
I wouldn't know what to do.
Do you think you would be successful if the other side had a lawyer?
Oh no.
Yeah. So, this guy's name is Clarence Earl Gideon. He was charged with breaking into a pool hall and stealing some beverages and $5 in cash. He couldn't afford a lawyer, so he asked the courts to appoint one for him. The court refused, which we already know that that's a violation of the Sixth Amendment, right? Under Florida law, only a person charged with a crime that could result in the death penalty could have a free court-appointed lawyer. That was at that time. I honestly don't remember what it is. 1963, yeah, that was the year. So he defended himself in front of the jury. He examined witnesses, made legal arguments, but it wasn't enough, and the jury found him guilty and sentenced him to 5 years in prison. He petitioned the Supreme Court while in prison about his case, and he argued that the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution guaranteed him the right to the lawyer. And it, in fact, says that in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. So they had already said, based off of the Miranda v. Arizona, that yes, they had to, and this was before Miranda, but they'd argued this, and they said, yeah, you got to give this guy a lawyer. They sent his case back to a lower court. He received a lawyer in a new trial. This time the lawyer presented evidence that proved he was not guilty. And because of this case, states must now provide a lawyer to criminal defendants who cannot afford one. So public defenders are lawyers employed by the state to represent these criminal defendants. So this guy ended up getting off because of that. And yes, you do have a right under the Constitution if you are accused of a crime, so like stealing stuff. Yeah. All right. I think that's all of them. Do y'all have any questions, comments, complaints? I'm
good.
Good. All right. Just remember, and let me pull this back up here. And I guess I need to share this so you guys can see it. Make sure that you do your edgenuity. Again, your rights, freedom of expression should be finished up today, and you should at least begin. You could possibly do all of due process. This will put you at the 37% mark if you're looking for percentages complete. And I think that's that. If you have any questions, you guys can definitely contact me either through Remind or send me email. Did you guys like doing it this way? Was this a little easier so you didn't have to type and you could ask questions and stuff?
Yeah.
Alright, cool. Alright. So, I think we're going to get out of here if you guys and gals have no further questions. I'll put this to you, and maybe I'll put it in the remind. Would like 1 o'clock be a better time than 9 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay. We might do that. I'll put it out in remind. You guys put it out on the Kid Network, so text all your buddies. Tell everybody that starting tomorrow, I will do this later in the day.
Sounds good to me.
Alright. Well, if you guys have nothing else, then I think we're going to get out of here. Have a good rest of your day.